A shock poll has revealed that the Tories have been pushed into fourth place behind the Liberal Democrats. Can Kemi Badenoch rescue the situation, or is her future as leader in peril?
And Nigel Farage is on the up again. But why is he quite so quiet on the EU surrender deal? Camilla, welcome back to the Daily Tea.
Thank you.
Boy, did we miss you
I missed
yesterday.
you. I wanted to get stuck into the Brexit pie.
We had, Camilla and I are on WhatsApps regularly. We had initial WhatsApps from you, Camilla, very early in the morning, how furious you were about the reporting, the pre-reporting of Keir Starmer's deal with the EU. That was just ahead of the big conference yesterday at Lancaster House.
Our headline today on the main paper is "Kissing Goodbye to Brexit." Some people don't agree with that, but having just listened to these scenes in the Commons as both Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch have sort of been at odds over this deal, I have to agree with the Conservative leader, because I do regard it to be a huge sellout of our fishermen. 12 years. I mean, honestly, it was like, as I think James Crisp said yesterday, you get more for murder. We are back in the single market by stealth on agri-foods and energy. We've signed this energy pact to sort of share in carbon with a bloc that pays 50% more for it. Doesn't make any sense. Repackaging a youth mobility scheme as a youth experience scheme, I'm sorry, is just so dishonest, and we still can't rule out students coming here up to the age of 30 and bringing dependents, so that flies in the face of everything that Labour have said about bringing down immigration. And I tried to get this out of Nick Thomas-Symonds, who is Labour's man, the Cabinet Office Minister who has been negotiating this deal, on my show on Sunday. How much money are we giving to Brussels now? Oh, well, we've always given money to Brussels and we've had to pay to rejoin the Horizon scheme. No, just tell me, how much taxpayers' cash in millions are we going to be paying today as opposed to yesterday when we didn't have this deal? Can't put a figure on it. So I do think it's a Brexit betrayal.
I think we will be paying in also on Erasmus Plus, which is the new, we're going to rejoin the student exchange system across Europe. That piece of sophistry around youth mobility, calling it a youth experience, yesterday was dominated by Keir Starmer and what he said. What we didn't get so much of yesterday was actually, what are the parties in opposition saying? Nigel Farage, quite quiet. If you compare his reaction to the immigration statement by Keir Starmer, the land of strangers, Island of Strangers last week, Nigel Farage was straight out on that. He was straight out on the India free trade deal, suggesting that Indian workers here would be cheaper to employ because of that free trade deal. That 2.5-minute X and TikTok video, straight away. On this, a few words about the fishing deal. He said it would sell out the fishing industry for the United Kingdom, but not that much noise for him. And then today, we've just seen the statement to the House of Commons by the Prime Minister. The person who wasn't in the Commons was Nigel Farage. Clearly, he feels he's banked this issue, that he doesn't need to say more, because anybody who believes, as you do and as many, many others do, that this is a one-route ticket, a single ticket back towards the European Union, are already in agreement with him. So he doesn't have to make that much noise in this area. Where it's harder, and this is where the polling is so difficult, is for Kemi Badenoch. What is Kemi Badenoch's position, given that she doesn't want to withdraw, or she hasn't said yet she wants to withdraw from the ECHR, which is connected to our relationships with the European Union? She has found it far harder to define where the Conservatives are in this debate.
Let's first of all listen to Keir Starmer addressing the House of Commons, celebrating the deal that he has signed with the EU.
The principles we took into the negotiations are clear and simple. Does it drive down bills? Does it drive up jobs? Does it strengthen our borders? And in each case, the answer is resoundingly yes. These deals release us from the tired arguments of the past and, as an independent sovereign nation, allow us to seize the opportunities of the future. A clear message sent across the globe that Britain is back on the world stage. Mr. Speaker, the reaction to this deal from business has been absolutely clear. This new partnership has been backed. This isn't the full list. The Federation of Small Businesses, the CBI, the Richest Retail Consortium, Asda, Morrison's, Salmon Scotland, the Food and Drink Foundation, the British Chamber of Commerce, Ryanair, Vodafone, producers of meat, foil and poultry, and on it goes. And I wonder whether that long list of businesses coming out to support this deal will temper the reaction of the Leader of the Opposition in her response.
And then let's hear Kemi Badenoch's quite punchy response.
When Labour negotiates, Britain loses. He talks about a hat trick of deals. They are own goals. In 2020, the Conservatives concluded the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the largest and most comprehensive free trade agreement in the world. We agreed to come back in 5 years to improve terms. This renegotiation should have been an opportunity to improve terms for our country. The terms are improved for the EU. And the Prime Minister can dress it up as much as he wants, but he has failed. It is bad for bills, it is bad for jobs, and it is bad for borders. This is not a deal made for Britain. This is a deal made for Labour's PR, to show them on the world stage. But it is a stitch-up for our country for their short-term headlines.
Let's also just hear how Keir Starmer responded to her, because it was quite patronising in tone.
A fraud of a deal, a failure of a Prime Minister.
Oh dear. That was just such an unserious response.
I think the trouble is for Kemi Badenoch is even if she does cut through on the issue and we know where the Tories stand on it, Brexiteers, righties will always go above her head and look to Farage for guidance on this. I think he was quiet because he knew that the newspapers were doing a lot of heavy lifting on Reform's behalf. He didn't need to scream and shout. We were doing it on our front page quite loudly. I think also there may be a sense that people are rather over Brexit and the Brexit wars and don't want to return to them. I think you and I were discussing, is it a bit like COVID? It's like, oh God, I just don't want to go back there. Please make it stop. There is some YouGov polling to suggest that actually that 48-52 Brexit result has shifted and that some leavers have had regrets. And YouGov found that 2/3 of Brits actually favour closer alignment with the EU. So is he making a political calculation here that, I mean, at the end of the day, I kind of looked at it yesterday and I thought, goodness me, you know, Keir Starmer has like got in the Brexit bus with 350 million on the side of it and is literally driving it headlong into the red wall. Is this guy trying to hemorrhage support? It's so extraordinary because you'll have people in those areas, regardless of whether they have got over Brexit and don't want to return to it. It's the kind of macro point of, God, he's not a very good negotiator. He just looks a little bit like Brussels' bitch, frankly. The Chagos giveaway, problems with the US deal and the Indian one. Yeah, we're glad we've got them, but not at any cost. And, oh, by the way, he's selling out our fishermen by giving away rights for 12 years rather than probably being able to get away with 5. It just creates the image of a Prime Minister that is a bit of a walkover and weak. What more does Farage have to say?
And at the moment, even without Farage leaning in at these moments, as I say, he lent in on immigration, he lent in on the India free trade deal. It is Reform that still have the momentum. That poll we referred to at the start of the podcast, Reform on 29%, Labour on 22%, the Lib Dems on 17%, and the Conservatives on 16%. Absolutely agree that if you think of the best performers on the Conservative side, I think Kemi Badenoch spoke, didn't you say,
yes,
at the
she
Conservative
gave a really
Friends
good
of
speech.
Israel. She's very good. She was good in the House today.
But nobody's there to hear it, Kamal.
Yeah.
She gives a great speech. There were lots of speeches yesterday. Hers was by far the best. The other person who spoke very well was Katie Lamb, who's an up-and-coming Tory. She spoke very movingly in the House about grooming gangs, and I was discussing it with the people at my table, and we were like, yeah, she's a Conservative to watch. She spoke really well, but nobody was there to hear it beyond the walls of the Park Lane Intercontinental Hotel. She then gives a press conference later.
Too late. It's too late.
It was too late.
I mean, what Keir Starmer has done there, which the Conservatives should learn from, he goes out often at 8:30 in the morning and lays out, you know, he tries to command the headlines for the day. And Kemi Badenoch should have been on the airwaves the minute Ursula von der Leyen and Keir Starmer left the stage.
Yes.
She should have immediately had her response press conference. It wasn't until 3:15, 3:30. Now, of course, because she was speaking at your lunch, which
Yeah.
you would want to commit to and be genuine and not cancel, you can understand why she wouldn't want to do that. But the optics of it for the public are difficult. It sounds like too long before she responds. She is one of their best communicators. Robert Jenrick is seen as the other best communicator. The two of them, if you look at the shadow cabinet, are the ones that are closest to Nigel Farage. So just as you say, people, if they want real right or common
Yes.
sense right, may as well go for Nigel Farage.
Yeah, proper Brexity right.
Because Jenrick and Badenoch are also with that tone. It's almost in complete reverse the way that Keir Starmer speaks about the European Union. In the end, I believe that where Keir Starmer wants to get us is one more little shove and we're back in.
Yes.
Because Keir Starmer believes that the United Kingdom should be in the European Union, and it's a step-by-step process. So anyone who is pro-EU in any way, and as the polls show, there's a bit of softening about the issues around Brexit, but actually I think under testing they'd quickly go back to we don't want to be back in the European Union in any case. But Starmer's plan here is inch by inch I get to the mile. There's no point in me speaking about rejoining the EU because that would be a disaster. So he is doing his journey towards the EU in the same way that Reform are picking off the Conservatives. Because if you want the real EU backer, vote for Starmer. And if you want the real Brexiteer, vote for Farage. And Kemi has no space in that debate. And the public realise, and this is the real challenge for the Conservatives, the public always want to be able to vote on clear choices. And the clear choice on the issue of free trade agreements, EU, is Starmer has one approach, agree or disagree. Nigel Farage has another approach, agree or disagree. Kemi Badenoch isn't in that
I'm like
discussion.
visualising this now, thinking there's Farage on the White Cliffs of Dover. We know where he stands. There's Starmer, maybe at the Elysee Palace, alongside his bestie Emmanuel Macron. And there's Kemi Badenoch in a little sailing boat in the middle of the Channel, just getting blown about. And this is quite serious. This is choppy waters, to carry on the analogy. By the way, I do recommend reading Tim Stanley's piece about the deal, because he makes this comment about Starmer throwing Captain Birdseye to the sharks, which I thought was very good. But Kemi is in such choppy waters. I heard from somebody who is, let's put it this way, deep into the Tory machine, saying this is looking dicey. I mean, we got rid of Boris Johnson over a minuscule poll drop by comparison. To be fourth after the Lib Dems is horrendous. I mean, she has to be able to say, well, since I took over, again, I'm killing these puns, but I've steadied the ship. No, she's on the Titanic. I mean, you know, has the iceberg hit? Are they trying to just get water out of the hull? What's going on here? By the way, Robert Jenrick was at the lunch yesterday as well with his very formidable wife. They were on the table behind Kemi Badenoch, and then I kind of had my back to them and I wanted to watch because, of course, Mrs. Jenrick did the famous eye roll when Kemi was doing her speech.
We were there, Camilla, weren't we?
I know.
When she won, when Kemi won.
I introduced them both to Harry, my son, and he was intrigued by both of them, really, because I had pointed out that they'd been leadership rivals. And you look at Jenrick and he has to watch her go up on stage, and he's probably secretly thinking, along with his wife, I could do a better job. Do we think she's in danger? I mean, going fourth in the polls, it's terrible.
I think there has to be this idea that where is her territory? Because she is in this position where if you're stuck in the middle of those two, those are going to be the two big blocks. And in the end, in a two-party system, which is broadly still what we have, it's going to be Reform and their common sense right, and it's going to be Labour and Keir Starmer's sort of soft left, but also I'll change my principles, you know, week by week to try and do something that is popular. I think that Kemi's problem is where is her territory? And I am still struggling to see how she's going to carve out this space for her. Does she still need to be nervous about the Lib Dems? I mean, for Labour, I think there is an interesting point. He is actually slightly struggling against his own MPs. I think one thing where we will probably underestimate this for quite a long time and then suddenly it will blow up. Starmer had this private and apparently pretty disruptive meeting with his own MPs, who are very critical with the language around immigration. They've been very critical about what the Labour government has announced around benefits. Starmer was warned over and over again, not only get stuck into Farage, but also we're going to be losing to the Greens and the Lib Dems because we are not governing, we Labour are not governing as Labour. He also, I think, a quote from this meeting with his MPs, which was, how is Labour going to try and attack Farage? They haven't got that right. The quote is, they want to portray Farage as, and this is what Starmer apparently told the MPs, a state-slashing, NHS privatising apologist without a single patriotic bone in his body.
Doesn't work.
That is not... That's an argument that might work for what are described as lefties.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for the public because, A, he has taken much more care on policies on NHS, and he says he wants to hugely invest in the NHS. He's done this smart move, which is starting to join up what were traditionally seen as issues of the left, like steel nationalisation, a state supporting people with more money. That's something that he now speaks about with a degree of alacrity. And also, people believe that Nigel Farage is patriotic. And to attack him on that makes Labour sound like they are not patriotic.
No.
So I would advise him
Own
straight
goal.
away, and Morgan McSweeney, his chief of staff, that that is not the way to be successful against Farage. The way to be successful is, and I'd love to get to your point, Camilla, that we were speaking to before we came into the studio, is, can reform be trusted to run the country? And you had some interesting thoughts on the councils and how that might be actually quite an issue which could become negative for Reform UK.
We have to be aware that a number of untried and tested councillors have now been elected, and I'm not suggesting that that makes them less competent than their counterparts, but they're going... First of all, the Conservatives still have 5 times as many councillors at local level than Reform have. They will be using every trick in the book to try and expose the deficiencies of some of the newly elected reformers. Those councils that are now run by Reform absolutely need to prove themselves, and prove themselves quickly, as being different to the so-called uni parties that have gone before. That requires a degree of diligence, hard work, commitment and determination to turn things around before we get to the next general election, so Reform can turn around to the public and say, look, we have run things and we've run them well. And let's also be honest, they've got a massive task on their hands. They're going to have to vet and recruit. I was going to say 650 candidates to run in the next general election. No, they've got 5 MPs, so let's call it 645. They've got to find some really good, serious people, because people are going to be asking, well, can Richard Tice really be the next Chancellor? Who else are you going to recruit? Who are you going to encourage to defect from the Tories if you can get some more big names on the kind of potential cabinet team sheet? So could Reform blow up?
And before,
yes, they could.
Yes, we've got more local elections, of course, before the next election, which is due for 2029, but also we've got huge elections in Wales and in Scotland. There must be a degree of exhaustion within Reform. I remember speaking to an official, this was some weeks ago, so the numbers are probably higher now, but it's a very small organisation of a few tens of people.
They haven't got enough staff.
I mean,
and they need to upscale massively.
And although the money does appear to be there, obviously with Zia Yusuf, with Nick Candy, with some new donations coming in, building a business with that rapidity, a party, let's call it like a business.
But it is like a startup.
I know, Zia Yusuf, who is an entrepreneur, knows that journey very well. You're going to have trip-ups. You're going to hit things that you just simply cannot manage. And I think where Labour, and possibly Kemi Badenoch actually, will need to be watching is, it's more they can't be trusted, they have no depth, not they're not patriotic or they want to privatise the NHS. Throwing out they want to privatise the NHS as being the Labour fallback position. The public aren't interested in that anymore because so many of the public believe that the NHS isn't working.
Yeah.
So Starmer is making the wrong argument.
They don't mind having their hips replaced at private clinics with the NHS paying for it. So that argument is spurious.